Rice says that the purpose of this text is to offer up the understanding of Detroit as a network. In order to achieve this, he provides a thorough review of some of the relevant literature in the areas of space and place, as well as networking and mapping. The book, of course, being Digital Detroit. Rice opens discussing Dessertou's key text in studying space and place, Walking in the City. In this piece, Dessertou outlines the space is what a walker turns into place. In this way, the people who experience space write it. They are creators of a space. The spectator, or Dessertou's walker, not only impacts the space, but the spectator is impacted by the space. Through our relationship with the space, Rice posits that we form a kind of network. In this network, Rice positions Detroit not only as the network, but as an actor. Rice is careful to point out that the situations that give any space placeness are not permanent. He cautions us that rhetoric is about invention, and he positions the city as a kind of ouye for those who do not wish to engage with the city in this kind of relationship. Detroit is French for in the strait. Rice points out that Detroit was an early laid-out city. As one navigates space, they are navigating a web of relationships. Rice expresses the idea that a space is devoid of relationship is effectively a non-space. Further, Rice cites Auge as saying that space, which is non-relational or concerned with identity, is a non-place. These two theoretical underpinnings highlight the importance of subjective experience within the ability to know and create relationships within any given space. Rice allows that we are spectators first, and then we begin to form relationships with the city. Rice points out that his initial conception of Detroit were relational and that he got them from headlines. This brings home the idea that identity is effectively contingent. Digital Detroit attempts to explain Detroit as a network. Rice explains that networks are based on movement and that they exist based on the different interactions that take place within the network. Basically, the network is based on the interactions that take place within it. Maps can be made of networks, but in doing so they encode that which happens in the network as being more permanent. As discussed earlier, perceptions, identity, and perceptions of identity are at best highly contingent. Aside from mapping the contingent, maps are also political in that they bring into question the ideas of inclusion and exclusion. That which is shown is glorified, and that which is not shown might as well not exist as far as the map is concerned. Rice explains that Cora is Greg Ulmer's adopted notion of topoi. Cora is, according to Ulmer, the discussion of meaning-making as being fluid in the ordering of things which have not, as of yet, been differentiated between. The overall purpose of this book, as Ulmer describes it, is to reorder each space as part of a larger network of meaning-making. Rice aims to get this not only by focusing on the specifics, but by focusing between relationships in all of these different areas. Overall, it comes down to the idea of the city as a rhetorical space, or perhaps more like a rhetorical agent, as Rice might like it. Examining the city this way takes note on the idea that as we examine the city also examines us. As a participant observer, one affects and is affected. The perceptions that we are able to draw might be reproducible, but they're inherently subjective. This is further complicated by the fact that the city too changes, as we change as well. So, not only is the object of our inquiry not stable, but we are not stable as well. What we view in one way at any one time, we could view as completely different in another instance. Identity and perception are highly contingent. It is through this idea that Rice comes around to explaining the city as a network. Networks are, as mentioned before, made of change. They can help explain complex relationships, and they account for all of the contingency that we have to deal with. Helps us to make sense of things. Rice says that to engage with a database of rhetoric that begins from the exigence of space and place, I, Rice, need to travel through the various network spaces that comprise, for me, Detroit, so that I might open up the city's network rhetoric. Ultimately, in doing this, Rice comes to understand the place through his experience within the place. So, to do this, we have to understand how we understand. This construct is how we are rhetorically able to make sense, or to make a meaning, in and out of the area that's around us. Throughout this book, and into the next section, we'll continue to follow with Rice as he explains Detroit as a network. This allows us to negotiate space and place, and networking, while accounting for the contingency of experience. Stay tuned.